Alright, so we're working on the Skyranger fuel system. So there's a nice little tank in here, and there was a vent thing over here. Got that one plugged off because I need a vent on this side. And put the header tank in here. So there's a vent here that goes up, and it just goes up into that tube and it goes back down in here. So that's the actual outside vent. So we teed onto that, so it's a good vent, and just venting the top of the header tank to get the air out of it. Then there's a couple of hoses at the bottom here that tee together because there's a tunnel here, so there's a hose from each side tee together, and that is just basically a drain. There's a hose going off, so that's simple. Then there's another couple of tees, or one more tee, and it is the feed, and it goes to this little valve, and then I teed onto there, stepped it up to 5/16 here. Flowing through our filter here and then into the header tank here. So I haven't put the pumps in yet, so we can actually test this. We turn that on and it should be flowing, and sure enough it is. So we're filling the header, so it's all working. Now we can put the pumps in and close it all up and put fuel up to the engine. I'll put a little another bracket to hold the tank in place, but basically I welded on a piece of half tube there, and it just snaps in place like that. Then we had to do a little mod to the back of the seat to clear this, but very little, and it worked out good. And all the Viking pumps are dual O-ring seals. Pumps have their own filters, but we don't rely on them. There's extra precaution. We rely on external filters before it gets to that. It has a built-in regulator and filter and power and pump motor, all part of it. And there's dual, two of them going in next. After pulling the Rotax out and installing the more vertical Viking 90, as you can see here, the original cowling is not covering the bottom. It's plenty wide on the side, but it's just a different shape. So we decided to reuse the top cowling, made a mold and a plug and a mold and a new cowling, and here's how it turned out for the bottom cowling. Top cowling is the same. All right, so the radiator is same as always. This underbelly. I used the side shrouds. Because it's fabric bottom, we put the soft foam here and glued it to here. We made a steel bracket that hangs on the main structure inside the firewall there. There's two giant tubes that have these bolts. And then we just hung the radiator from that. We did bend it a little bit because the center of the firewall is a little bit bent like that. And then we put a couple of 90s on here to get the hoses up inside. And back here we just hung the radiator left and right. And the bolts just kind of go up into this tube here. Just hanging bolts like that. Alright, so we finished up everything. Now we got a coolant tank, which will be lower than the engine because it draws from there. And it has a kind of a spongy, thick wall hose that's meant for the coolant. And that goes to a fitting on the front of the cylinder head here. And we have another bottle over here that's for gearbox. And that's a different hose, and that's meant for oil. And it's a little thinner wall. And that hose parallels and also goes to the same general area, but goes to the back of the gearbox, and that's for the gearbox to have venting as it expands and contracts. This is not a bottle to fill coolant or a gearbox oil. It is just there to be able to vent. These kinds of bottles will vent through the threads of the cap. I still put a little hole in the cap though. This one has a hole. It's very tiny, and it is on the top of the cap, and we can't zoom in, but if you read where it says coolant only is inside of the O of the bottle. So now we're going to put a propeller on it and fire it up. All right, so we don't have drawings for these mounts, but basically what we did is we made a single point mount up here for the 90 engine, and it is attached through this bolt and this bolt. So it's a weldment and it's super strong. You can see the diagonal tubes and everything. Then we got mounts down here. Comes from that bolt back there, goes down here, and then it V's into the back of the airplane for the main structure right there. So part of the reason to kind of experiment with this airplane was the BushCat. There's quite a few of those in the world, and structure is very similar, but there was a little challenge to make a mount for it, but definitely doable. It's all a 4130 steel mount, the part that we did. The airplane is more of ultralight style with bent aluminum tubing. That's not what we put in. We basically welded everything, and some of it is in sections and some of it is one piece. Now we just did the cooling system, radiator we talked about. We got a 45, a 45, and a 90 on this side. So that turned out real nice. We tucked that in real good, clear the cowling. And then we did the other one. That was a little more of a challenge. We got a 45 starting up here, and we're coming down with that, following the gearbox. We have that tied up right here with a double tie wrap, heavy duty tie wrap. We got a double one here. We got another 45. We just 45'd everything here. And a 45. And then we're turning into a 90, another 90, and straight into the radiator. And that all clears the cowling and turned out really good. That takes care of the cooling system. We're gonna fill the cooling now. We could either get a funnel with a thread on it, or we just tape this one on.